Hello, everyone. We are back from the break. I would like to take this time to introduce our meetup groups Agile Daily, Agile Practitioners, and DevOps London. Link of these groups are available in the event website under Media Partners section. You can subscribe to these groups to receive regular updates about events and trainings on Agile, DevOps, and testing. Moving on with the program, I'm glad to present our next speaker, Arun Narayanaswamy, Director Engineering, Amadeus Labs, and his co-speaker, Virish Ershed, Senior Director of Engineering, Amadeus Labs, speaking on DevOps topologies.
Hello everyone. Can you guys hear me? Someone from the organizer committee could tell.
Yes, we can hear you, Virish.
Okay. Yeah, this is Arun here. Videsh is also in. Videsh, if you could speak so that we can check before we progress. No, we still can't hear you. You're probably on mute.
Yes. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. The bit about moving from physical presentations to web-based ones, you don't get to see the audience. So, I wish you all wherever you are. So let's start with the DevOps topologies, and the key bit that I'm going to share here is the ways you could structure your DevOps teams. But that's also a little more than that, is to share saying there is no one path to success. There are many ways to go forward, and you'll sort of see how that is. So let me start with this. Okay, so let me quickly begin with the company that we come from, right? So we are from Amadeus. We are the backbone of travel. We help all the travel companies and airlines and airports, etc., into digitization, and we are largely a product organization helping deliver products to these organizations to make your travel better. Moving along, I also want to share the scale of operations that we have. In some ways or form, we would do more transactions per second until the early part of this decade. Google has overtaken us for sure, but we still do about 20 bookings per second. We have about 75K transactions per second on our platform and on our data center, right? So why do I say this? So the reason why I sort of highlight these is to give you a view that one, we are complex, we are large as well, and transformation in terms of journey to DevOps, etc., is quite complex. It's not as easy as we do in probably a startup or things that have evolved now, right? So we've been a product organization for 30 odd years. So a little bit about us. I'm Arun. I take care of the DevOps platform within Amadeus. And my co-speaker is Virish. He will also present one of the case studies that we have within Amadeus to see how these topologies work. Virish, quick intro from you as well.
Yeah, this is Virish Ershed, 17 years of technology and leadership experience across different domains. And I have been associated with Amadeus from last 10 years now. It's been a big startup experience. I lead one of the most mission critical and the complex platform, which is the heart of Amadeus, that's reservation. Over to you.
Cool, thanks Virish. Okay, moving on. So we are a little tight on time. I have 30 odd slides, or rather we have 30 odd slides. We intend to complete it on time. So let's take questions at the end. And the way I would structure it is, obviously I look at the topologies first and things which are not the right patterns, but don't assume that the anti-patterns are not the way to go. It could be your stepstone into what could be the right thing in the future, and we will show you how, right? And the second part is obviously the patterns that you could adopt. And the third part of this presentation is where Virish would step in and say how this has sort of been implemented within the organization and how you could sort of emulate it. So let's look at the DevOps anti-pattern, which is one of the most common thing. We continue to keep a dev and ops as two segments. And then the biggest bit is there are two silos. We could, behind the scenes, you could say they're working together, there are common shared goals, etc. But they all report to different lines, and you pass the ball between each of them, right? So this is one of the most common anti-pattern that you see, and two different structures dealing with two different areas of work, right? So I will continue with these two actors, one with the plant on the head and one with the flower on the head, to depict our dev and ops segments, right? So moving on, this is the second bit of an anti-pattern. If you look at a structure, you have a dev team in place, you have an ops team in place, and then a brilliant idea strikes, and sort of the management says, let's create a new DevOps team. You start calling a few people with the DevOps titles. Then you also say, this is a new team which is formed, and this is DevOps. It's going to solve every problem of yours. This is like the best bad anti-pattern that you can think of, especially if you have organizations which very clearly depicts saying, I have a DevOps team. That itself is a large anti-pattern, and you have to look at how you can move away from it, right? Let me not focus on why these don't work, because when I get to the good patterns, some of these do get covered in a way or form in terms of what it needs to be, right? But think about it, try relating it to your own organizations to see whether you have a dev team separate. When I say dev ops separate, it logically means they report into different lines. I mean, it could be not at a management, I mean, even at a manager level, if these are two different teams, there is something wrong. But certainly the much higher in hierarchy you go, and you say at a director level, a senior director level, or a VP level, these two converge, there is something wrong, right? So that's how, I mean, each circle represents one of these groups. Sorry, I don't get any feedback while I'm speaking, so I don't know if I'm going according to the script. Anyone from the organizer team, if you think this is not going the right way, please pause and then you can ask questions. Okay, so the continuing on the anti-pattern models, right? So this is one of the things that's been written quite frequently in these days, to say no ops model, right? When you kill the ops team, you bring the DevOps kind of a team within the dev group, but you keep it as a separate group. This DevOps team does your builds, deployments, infrastructure as a service, automation, etc. But your dev team still continues to enjoy and dance like the structure that you have here, which continues to say, this is my job, I develop, I don't do anything else. And then once it's done, I pass it on to the DevOps team, and they will push it to production, and they will deliver, right? So this is your next stage. It's still an anti-pattern. You could call your DevOps team, you bring in a cloud guy, a full stack developer, etc. But they keep it on the dev side, and the ops side is still separate, right? This is probably moving from dev and ops reporting at a director, senior director level, and bringing it potentially down to a manager level and say, I have a dev team and an ops team, both report to the same manager, but they still are separate teams, right? This is still not a DevOps model which you should adopt. Moving in further, it's sort of the reverse, where you keep a DevOps team, but keep it under the ops umbrella and not under the dev umbrella, right? So this is even more disruptive and destructive, primarily because the bit of the ops group here, which is the larger circle, will start feeling I am on the legacy side of things, and people on this DevOps side, which is the smaller circle, will start thinking this is my niche area. I'm a DevOps team. I'm the best of this ops lot, and I'm able to do this kind of work. There is a fine improvement of this area which gets onto the good pattern of things. But think of it saying, irrespective of where you call this DevOps team and keep it a separate group, keep the ops group separate, keep the devs group separate, it's still an anti-pattern, and that's not how you need to progress, right? So that's what all these kind of structures indicate. So now let's look at sort of the potential success approaches, right? Successful approaches are a little different. This is one of the most important ones. We can call it the collaborative approach, right? It's still two teams but you sort of bring in maybe an agile way of working, maybe a virtual group, etc. When you combine these two areas with a small overlap, the larger the overlap, the better, which is what we would get to eventually. But even if it starts with a small overlap, this is perfect. You start sharing knowledge between these two teams. There could still be opportunities or still be concerns where you would say, this is dev only area and not the ops area, right? But the ops guys would also say deployments is only in production, only will be taken care by the dev, should not touch it. So there are still concerns in this, but then it's still converging, right? And the more closer it moves over a period of time, as I say, the dev continues to move to the right, the ops continue to move to the left, and then you have a same circle which both of them have same common shared goals, right? That's what you need to get to. So this is where I get a little more details, because let's not look at the anti-pattern way, but when you're looking at the good patterns, this requires strong technical leadership. I did indicate at the beginning saying these are two different groups. It could be reporting lines being different. This has to be a more top-down approach to say these two teams have to start working together. In a very large organization, bringing this together means disrupting an environment, right? It would mean I may not, the two managers will have to work more closer, which is not very easy. And again, it's easier to say, look, I have already progressed, my company is already in this model, but there is a large force which doesn't help move dev and ops closer, but it will continue to push them away, right? So that's something that you need to be very, very important, right? This is also a blame-free environment, because dev, when there are overlaps, the dev and ops will have to collaborate. If dev makes a mistake, the ops helps you out, and if the ops makes a mistake, the dev helps you out in terms of automation, following the process, adhering to process, etc. Right? There's no passing the ball. There is one code. Both of them play on that same code, which is the common area. This is a very highly effective model if done well, and how it can continue. Right? So the second bit is the shared group, and if you notice, this is where both the circles of dev and ops have a major overlap, and there could be still a small area of non-overlap. These could be niche areas of work in dev side. These could be niche areas of work on the ops side. Could be very, very hardcore infrastructure layer, but not at the automation layer and beyond, right? So this is the structure which is the ideal way to develop and ideal way to get into, right? So what this brings, this obviously brings a highly focused team, which is one team of dev and ops. Again, remember, I do not tell this is a dev ops team. It is a focused dev and ops team where everybody does everything, right? This is both a top-down and a bottom-up approach. You will have to have, because once these two converge, you don't need two managers, you need one. You don't need two teams, you need one. You don't need a specialized skill of an infrastructure guy and a specialized skill of a developer guy. Both are same. Both cater to production, both take on calls, both do development, both do designs, right? So this is what it needs to get to. This is not a one-day journey. It is a long journey. So it's easy to represent with some cartoons, but it's not easy to get to it in an organization, right? This works really well when there is one large product, not multiple teams. You have like one large dev team and one large ops team. Combining them together is easy. This is a very difficult model to work in when your company has 100 different products and 100 different ops teams to it. I mean, it may not be 100 different ops teams, but it could be 100 different teams in an ops team, right? This is also a very effective model, but works very well in large organizations. And again, to mention, this is also a no-ops model, right? This is what I told in an anti-pattern. Here you have eliminated the ops team, but this is what has been absorbed into one team. You have not eliminated the ops, you have absorbed the ops into dev, and the dev has been absorbed into ops. Right? So then we get to more of a model which works very well in a large organization. You have the DevOps team converged into a dev team. So again, don't look at it as a separate team. Here, the whole thing has been combined into one. But you keep an infrastructure as a service or a platform which is provided. I mean, you can call it more like a cloud team, which is helping you give the infrastructure, but the raw infrastructure over which you develop your tools and operations and support systems and processes, etc. Right? So this is a very good model to get to if you're a large organization. Works very well because you could have multiple teams. You could have one infrastructure as a service layer within your organization, which could provide you tools. This is where we get to the federated tools model. Tools like Jenkins could be a master, could be owned by one, and there could be many slaves which could be driven out of independent dev groups outside. Right? This is also this also aids in teams which is moving from a traditional to a new age model. Right? Somebody who has a large team on this area slowly starts contributing into the dev group, and this becomes a more focused group of an infrastructure layer or a platform layer. In this, governance is a very, very important layer, primarily because when you give a federated model, there are 10 different teams with all being DevOps oriented. The infrastructure layer has to ensure all the tools have been used right? So this is a medium effective team. It's not the perfect solution, but it's still a workable solution in a large organization. One of the more successful models also is a temporary DevOps model, where this is what I explained in an anti-pattern way. You create a DevOps team, DevOps team, Dev and Ops contribute into this team. They work towards building automation, improving your process, standardization, eliminating bottlenecks, etc. And then you kill this team. And then what logically means this Ops will become infrastructure as a layer, infrastructure as a support, infrastructure as a service layer, and the dev team becomes the overall dev and ops layer. Right? This also is risk of getting into an anti-pattern model, because if this becomes permanent, the intermediate layer, then you have gotten into the first anti-pattern model, and the dev and ops continues to remain the same. And the temp team has to be managed like a temp team. They should not be given responsibilities which is going to be permanent. There should be a clear-cut focus in terms of documentation and transitioning into the one group of dev and ops. This is low to high effectiveness, primarily because if it becomes an anti-pattern, this team continues to stay, it becomes low. And if this gets dissolved into the dev team, it becomes very highly effective and then becomes a successful model. I guess I'm running short of time. So one of the last models, which is one of the most successful ones, is the magic team, which we call the DevOps advocate team. They come, they play as an advocate. They don't do anything, but they come and tell what is the right ways of doing. And they eventually help take out all the ops work from this area, put it into the dev thing, and make this a dev and ops team. And the ops team starts becoming more of a infrastructure as a service layer, or this gets dissolved overall. Right? The key thing is these teams are built to die, in the sense they come, they explain, they motivate, they drive the culture, and they vanish. Right? So this is, when they vanish, there is a risk that it could go back to the same old stage, but it is a very highly scalable solution because DevOps team, advocate team can advocate across many different teams, help them migrate from one area to the other. And for people who needs more handholding, they do handholding. And there are, let's say, great sparks in these teams to become a DevOps advocate and help percolate this knowledge into other teams as well. So the biggest bit here also is the quality and passion of the advocacy team is very, very important. If this team is a dull team, are not able to motivate the others, not able to really tell what are the benefits, how can they transform, etc., this could completely waste the time and energy of a lot of teams, and it could eventually lead to more damage than actually success. This again is medium to highly effective, because while they are there, they usually start with a medium effectiveness, and if done right and they vanish, they become a highly effective team. So let's move on to a specific case study. I mean, I gave various different formats and structures. Let's look at one of the case studies that we implemented in a large organization like ours. We have multiple products. So it's, as I say, we are a large organization. There are a few set of things that work. I think nobody better than Viresh could explain that. So over to you, Viresh, with what you had to share.
Yeah, thanks, Arun. That was very insightful. So let me share with you all our journey, our story about this transformation from moving from a traditional development or operational organization into a DevOps. So we coin it, our version of DevOps, as a ResOps. We term it as ResOps. Res is the name of an organization, reservation. As I said, reservation is a platform, mission critical application, which is serving around 125 airlines and large part of the bookings that happens in Amadeus. This is the heart of Amadeus. We deploy around 4,000 software loads into production every year. So when this is the mission criticality of the application and so many changes are happening in, you could already sense and see that the amount of pressure that was coming in to the development teams and as well as to the operations teams. And both the organizations were organized, as Arun explained, in a line organization with clear definition and the objectives that they were given to each of these organizations. So what was happening in, next slide. So as you could see, these were the two organizations. So on the development side, we were the ones who were giving the commitments to the customers, the customer facing teams in terms of the delivery. And on the operation side, their objective was to make sure that the platform is secured, the stability was the prime factor for them. And then the additional objectives that were given to them is to say, increase the time to market on the customer deliverables to the development organization and increase the stability onto the operations or the SRE organization. As you could already imagine with two of this, where the agility and stability both needs to be achieved. So both of these teams were having a lot of confrontation between them because the development teams were giving a commitment saying that operations will understand the priorities of the business, then that could be delivered. And operations were thinking development will not give any commitments considering the operational module and the stability of the systems. But these were given. So then operations were facing a challenge from the development teams coming in saying that this needs to be delivered faster, this needs to be taken further. They did not have the bandwidth to do on the operation side. And a lot of developers and the development teams were thinking in, okay, I'm taking care of the customer commitments. I want to deliver faster, but my SRE or the operations team is not helping me to do that. So it led to a lot of complaints and escalations. People were all in the wait and see attitude and do this. And from the development side, they were comparing and saying that, okay, this is due to a lot of manual processes which are put in place, which is not helping us to do. And from the operations or SRE, they say that we have too much of workload that we have to do. We cannot think of an automation to do, and we do not have the skills to do and try and do that, right? So one thing which was in common is to say the standardization and the automation framework, which was really missing in. It led to a lot of reliability issues. It led to the predictability of the deliveries getting questioned by the customers and all that. Considering the criticality of the application and the organization, it was very much required from the leadership team, the management team, to put across a group to brainstorm along with the operations and the development teams to say, what is the issue? What are the real things that we need to address? So when we did this, so what happened? Few things which came across to say that, okay, there were heavy manual processes. There was lack of automation, the lack of cross-skilling which was happening across both the teams. And then we all decided, okay, let's venture into a DevOps model in a collaborative way together with the development and the operations teams, right? So then we all agreed, say, let's go ahead and do this. In order to have any successful transformation, we need to be very clear in terms of the objectives which needs to be achieved. And the three parties which were involved in this transformation to be successful were the management, operations or the SRE, or the developers. So what did we agree in terms of what are the objectives? Because we need to be very clear in terms what we need to try and do that. From the management perspective and the leadership, we said that, okay, we need to have a transparency in terms of the processes and the predictability needs to be achieved so that we can answer the business and the customers with the high pressure environment that we're staying in. And we should not compromise on the resiliency of the platform. We should be able to make sure that the stability is maintained, because as I said, every booking that happens in Amadeus, it happens through Amadeus platform. Every travel booking that happens, every second booking that happens in the world, it happens through Amadeus. So it was very important for us to make sure that stability is not compromised. And then from the development perspective, they wanted to know the entire operational bottlenecks, and they wanted to be aware of what are the challenges that are happening with the operations and how do we venture into the DevOps transition. Because for the developers, it was very important in this transition mode because they have to identify the gaps in the manual processes. They have to help their SRE colleagues to get the development skills and learn the operational skills, right? And then from the SRE or the operations, they have to make sure that the objective was to make sure the operational overload which they were facing in, it needs to be managed and all the inefficiencies addressed. They need to get upskill themselves, cross-skill themselves. They need to understand the functionality and the functional or the business aspects of the things. And then to be very closer to the development teams. So in order to do all this, we said, okay, let's agree and set up a model. So the model is, as I said, we have to make sure that the day-to-day deliveries were happening in. That means the loads or the deployments to the production has to happen. So we grouped a set of functional packages or the applications with a mix of operations and the developer teams together as a Kanban, so that they take care of the day-to-day activities so that it's not impacted. And another primary objective of this Kanban team was to make sure that to identify of any manual processes and they log saying that this is something which could be automated. So that gets into the backlog. Then on the right side, as you see, the CI and automation team, that was a Scrum team, which used to pick the items from the backlog, which could be automated. So once that is automation is done, so the Kanban team uses it. So this was set up like an engine where the identification was happening and automation was happening in, and they try and use. So it was try, deliver, understand, and redo the things. We also set up some temporary teams for our fixed projects or the critical projects like the cloud migration, again with a mix of developers and operations, and also DB as a service, which is specialized skills. The whole setup was completely managed between operations and the development teams. As you could see, even the super product owner or super scrum master role was shared between development and SRE. And the organization that I'm talking about is about around 60 developers and SREs were put together. And the span of the platform is about 20 applications spanning across 17 databases. Again, I repeat, this is a platform which is highly scalable, which needs to take care about 30,000 transactions per second. Okay. So once this is being set up, what did we achieve by doing this? I'm talking about a year or so once the setup is being done. As you could have heard from our previous speakers, and you know very well that one of the biggest thing which is required for a successful DevOps is the cultural changes, the culture and the mindset. As we could see, for any transformation, there's a skill and a will which is required. For here, the will part or the engagement which was very much required between the both teams that we could achieve, where the developers were able to train their SRE colleagues on the business aspects, the development aspects, and the SREs could share about their operational things and the deployments with the developers. So by cross-skilling and knowing about the challenges or the bottlenecks of both of this, it was easier for an entire group to resolve the bottlenecks. So once as a group, we could resolve the bottlenecks, it helped us to regain the trust, not only in the SRE and the development teams, but also from the customer-facing teams or the business, because they were able to see the predictability coming back. So the business was going smooth. There was no escalations or there were no issues that were reported in. So apart from these cultural changes, some of the objective-wise that I could say is we increased month on month in terms of the productivity or the efficiency gains that we got happening in. The end-to-end deployments were happening in, which were all the manual processes earlier going about. Right. So next slide, please. So in nutshell, if I have to sum up and say, we achieved a great results with our ResOps model. A great amount of flexibility and efficiency gains were achieved. We were able to rebuild the trust and the satisfaction across the organization, right from the customers, customer-facing teams, the development and the deployment part. Because our SRE colleagues or the operations team were involved in each and every decision-making that we're putting across from the design to solutioning. Because they were able to understand the business now, they were part of the designing phase. And even the development teams, whenever they were preparing a solution, they know that what are the operational constraints and how it could be gained and to be done. So something which we never thought could happen in SRE coding and a development team to do the deployments, we could see that. And then it itself was a great achievement for the people. We also imbibed something that you should also make sure you do, that is to reward the small amount of things that happens in this process. Like whenever an SRE does a code, we used to appreciate them with some reward point. And then from an SRE, when a developer makes some deployments, it was also rewarded. These are small things, but it gives a lot of engagement to the teams and the motivations in that. So one simple recipe that I could prescribe out of our model and the journey is, you should all go with, it was one team, one goal, one vision, beyond team structures and locations. In order to achieve all of this, there are some ingredients which are very much required in the DevOps journey that we have experienced, is the trust, collaboration, and the sharing of the objectives, and the skill and the will. So this has been our journey. We have been successful in achieving what we wanted to do and where we are. And now we are thinking, how do we transform from being here to go to the next stage? So we are trying to venture out. Arun, next slide. So now we are brainstorming. We are trying to see if we have achieved this. Now, how do we get into the next model? So efficient DevOps is something. And I'm happy to share this experience if I come back in a year and share this experience on this transformation as well. So this has been our journey. So all of this journey involved a lot of collaboration, commitment, and the focus part of it. It was not very easy, but we could achieve what we were trying to do this. Thanks. That's all from my side.
Thanks, Viresh. It was a great insight on what it takes from moving from one stage to the other. I think you did not highlight on the timelines for it. I think it's taken months, probably more than a year itself. So sort of a motivation to people who are on the call. It's a journey. It's not a day story. So it is something possible, right? So this was sort of a high-level view. One of the things that I want to summarize with, I did share anti-pattern ways of DevOps, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's a stepstone to move forward. And then moving from one stage to the other, it need not be a direct goal or a jump from the things that are not the perfect way to the perfect way. There could be multiple different approaches taken from one step to the other, right? So that's something for you to follow. And this is what I would want to leave you with. It's never about beating the competition. It's always relatively easy to look at somebody else and say, I want to be better than them, but always look inwards to say, you are at a stage you are. Every company is in their own levels of success. It's just about making them better. It's about never-ending commitment to transform and change to get to the best of DevOps that you can achieve. That's all it is from our end, guys. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. Unfortunately, we can't get feedback in terms of listening to you or getting questions directly, but you could always reach out to us on the links shared. Happy to take questions. I know we are well beyond time. Over to the organizers, thanks for giving us this opportunity. I don't know if we take a couple of questions or we go back to the next topic. Okay, I do see a couple of questions. Does Dev and Ops overlap? Does Dev and Op overlap get influenced by business domain, or any domain can achieve highest possible overlap? It's Dev and Ops as a structure, for sure you can achieve highest level of overlaps. It's about DevOps sort of leads you to continuous deployments, right? Continuous releases mean you need a little more of, it could mean a business influence as well. I mean, this is a common example that I use. So let's say if you are on a plane, right? And let's say you're on the Airbus A380, which is one of the largest planes, and Airbus says we are technologically superior. We can upgrade this flight 2,000 times while the plane is in the air. I think most of us won't get onto the flight, right? So it's the same. I mean, if it's to do with, let's say, GE and says your ECG monitor can be upgraded 200 times while you're on the operating table. Well, I mean, yes, it is possible, but I don't want that kind of an ECG machine, right? So what I mean by that is a business you can deliver up to production, but to enable it is a little different, right? So yes, Dev and Ops as a function can be merged as much as possible, but how you eventually use it to make it deployable to or releasable to production is something completely in your control and which we need to get to. Okay, one more. It's very common that we have a lot of dev teams while there is one ops team. What is the best way to bring dev and ops team together where all dev and ops, well, all dev get ops help, right? So this is one of the models that I shared where we, the cloud model, where you make the ops team more like an infrastructure as a service team, right? They give you the bare metal infrastructure and everything beyond it, be it the application tuning, which could mean infrastructure tuning, it could mean automation on the infrastructure, bringing up your application, database management, everything should ideally be dealt with the DevOps team, right? So the ops need to be minimized to infrastructure as a service. And again, when I say infrastructure as a service, doesn't mean they are in any level not supreme. They are super experts on their area, but operations is part of application management. So that needs to be converged as much as possible. What part does a virtual team play with DevOps? I think ResOps, Viresh, I think you've done a fantastic team on this virtual team. Do you want to take this?
Yes, I will take this. The virtual team or the collaboration model that I explained is about the mix of the development teams and as well as in the operation teams coming together and to do that. One was to take care of the deployments and also to identify any automations that needs to be done and to do the automation. So that's the virtual team that was being set up. And another virtual team that we set up was for a specific project, like a migration to the cloud, which has specific objectives and specialized skills being part of that thing. I'll just answer one more thing which is there on the ResOps. The automation, was it part on the dev or operations? The automations that we are talking here is for both, because the dev and operations were together as part of the Kanban team, which was taking care of the daily deployments. The idea was to identify which are the things which could be automated. Some of the things that we did was something from directly from a development team to production in a seamless way. That one. And then some of the loads or the production deployments that could happen, it was all time initiated. There were a lot of things that could be avoided from the manual part. And third, the validation of the deployments, even this was automated. So these are some examples that I could share.
Yep. And just to indicate, I think Viresh did touch upon it. When we say virtual team is like a stepping stone to get to your final structure, right? So let's say if you have two teams reporting to two different managers, a virtual team could be a stepstone to say, okay, both work together, let's see how it works, and eventually converge into one area, right? It is again not a one-day story. It takes time because everybody has to get adjusted to this structure. And obviously in this whole process, obviously one of the managers have to figure out what else to do, right? That's one. Okay, what are your suggestions to implement DevOps when multi-parties outside parent organizations involved in development?
I could answer this. We So when I talked about ResOps in our organization, as I said, this is a large organization, multi-site, and we also had some vendors who are participating into our developments and doing some automations. So some of the virtual teams that we spoke about, it also involved a set of people who are not from Amadeus, were also involved into this. So one thing, it was clear what is expected from them. It was very clear to be there. I think it could be implemented. So there is no boundaries. We have done it.
Okay. Yeah, I think the one more question, this is interesting. How important is DevOps and site reliability engineering? Site reliability engineering is a whole topic which will probably take me hours to explain. But to get into this structure, we really need to look at whether site reliability engineer is actually doing what the Google definition of site reliability engineering is, or is it just a title that we have on a reframed build guy or a deployment guy who has been rebranded as a site reliability engineer, right? So if it has to do with something which is more detailed of a site reliability engineer, it gets into almost the area of infrastructure as a service, where the SRE is more catering to scaling, managing cost, etc., and not really for, and also automation in that whole process. and building insights into making this whole process smooth, right? So that's probably the SRE on that area. We need to be very careful when we define legacy work with a new title, right? So that's something that's very important.
I think the next question is more on the ResOps that I explained on Kanban. Again, when I said a mixed virtual team or a collaborative model that we implemented, as Arun also explained, the idea was to bring both the operations, which is SRE, and the development together. The Kanban board was a way to identify the things to be automated, but is not to say that only operations have to do or dev has to do. It was a way to say that both of them together they can do. So that's another way where dev could help an operations team to do some coding or the automation, the other way as well. Okay.
Yeah. I think the last ones, which is in, how essential is it to redesign org structure to enable DevOps to structurally bring Dev and Ops together? I think this is one of the most important models, and I did give you some of the approaches on being virtual, testing out the waters, transitioning to a more anti-pattern way, but still heading towards the goal. It is a very, very essential component. As long as the dev and ops are two different teams reporting to two different managers, unless you are in a core SRE kind of an organization, which is very large and building these services across the organization, restructure is one of the most common or most important stuff. And that's where I also said it has to be a top-down and a bottom-up approach. When I say top-down, it has to be a CEO or a CTO saying this is what we need to adopt and dramatically change the organization. But be aware, it's not a one-day story. It's a multi-month or a multi-year journey. So be confident on it. So I guess we are out of questions and out of time. I sincerely apologize to the next speaker where we've eaten quite a bit of time and the person probably is waiting for his chance. Thank you, everyone. You could still connect to us on the LinkedIn or however you want to reach out to us. We will share the slides through the organizing team. And I thank Unicom for bringing us here and helping us present to you. It's great talking to you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah. On my side, thank you, Unicom, to giving this experience of it. And for all the people who attended it, we'll be happy to share further on our experience, which could help you to do this journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Arun and Vireesh, for an interactive discussion. We look forward to see you at the panel discussion. Thank you.
Okay.